Hey everyone, it's Kate, and today I'm going to make a Grainline Studio field bag. This is a really sturdy bag that stands up by itself. It's got pockets, including a pocket with 3 grommets in it, making it perfect for a knitting bag. It also has a leather strap and a double drawstring. It's a great gift for any crafter, including yourself. It is designed originally by the Fringe Supply Company, and they partnered with Grainline Studio to make the pattern available. Fringe Supply Company has closed down, so the only way you can get these bags is by making them yourself. I'm really glad that Fringe Supply decided to partner with Grainline because I love the Grainline instructions. The illustrations are really clear. The language is really clear. It's just a great partnership because this bag comes together really easily. And I'm going to do something new today, which is make the whole bag on camera, almost the whole bag. I've done a few of the steps before, but it's going to be a longer video than usual, and I'm going to be showing you all the steps. Throughout the video, feel free to let us know if this format works for you. Usually I just show you a few steps at a time in a video, and this time it'll be the whole thing. I'll be making it out of the mustard canvas from Robert Kaufman. It's called Big Sur Canvas, but I want to show you a couple fabrics that would be really fun for this bag. They are called Wound Up, and they're from Ruby Star, and they have balls of yarn on them. And some of the balls of yarn are metallic copper, which is gorgeous. We put together kits using these fabrics for the Yarn Bar, which is a knitting store in Billings, Montana, and they sold out right away. We also have kits for the field bag. You can find them on the website if you search for field bag. And you can pick those fabrics. You can pick any of our canvases to make it out of. And you can certainly pick the wounded up fabrics if you want to make one of these for yourself if you're a knitter or other knitters in your life. I cut out the fabric off camera because it's really just 3 rectangles. It's a really easy project to cut out. You just cut out the rectangles and mark where the pockets are going to go. Hi, Gail. I'm glad you're here. And I am going to head over to the overhead and show you how to put in the very last grommet. So here we are. I have sewn the pocket and the pocket lining together. It's just a right sides together. Leave an opening for turning it right side out. I'm sure that you've done that before, and the instructions are really clear on how to do it. You leave the opening just flapping in the breeze because in step 16 we will be closing it up. So I've put on 2 of the grommets. We just went to the hardware store and got a grommet setting kit, and it's really helpful because it has a little tool and it comes with a little tiny block of wood, and you can use the tool to cut the holes in the fabric. The first one I made of these, I sewed together the pockets and then tried to cut the holes, and that took forever. So I suggest cutting the holes at the beginning before you form the pocket, as the instructions say, because it's a lot easier to make the holes in a single layer of fabric. So I've put 2 on, and then here's the 3rd one. The setter kit comes with a base that you put your grommet post on, and then you put the hole that you made over the post, and then I'm going to grab a grommet washer and put that on top of that. And then the kit comes with this tool that looks like this, and you just put it in the hole and bang it down. And then it gets stuck and you're on, oh, there we go. So I have my 3 grommets in, and I've also top stitched both short edges of the pocket. So now I'm gonna grab my main bag piece, and the main bag has 4 dots. There's 2 here and then 2 down here, which you may or may not be able to see. And you just line up your pocket with the 4 dots. And I'm going to pin it in place, because the next step will be to sew along the pocket lines that I drew when I cut it out. This is my 3rd field bag, and it does get easier each time. But it's really not that hard the first time. So, got it pinned in place, and I'm going to head over to the machine and stitch along these lines. All right, so it is a little bit tricky, because your bobbin, when you stitch along the pocket lines, your bobbin thread shows on the right side. So you want to make sure it doesn't create a little tangled nest, which it likes to do. So, and also, because you want it to look nice on the right side, I suggest using the big jig, which keeps, so you can start on the pocket and the presser foot is going to remain parallel to the feed dogs, and the stitches are just going to look a lot nicer. Okay, there we go. There's my bobbin thread. I'm holding the bobbin thread back here. And, oh, and I have it on a pretty long stitch length, because there's a lot of layers of canvas here. And here I go. And I have a jeans needle in here. I actually have a size 100. You probably don't need one quite that big, but a jeans needle is a good idea. So I'm just stitching along the edge here. And stop with the needle down and pivot. And then go across. And when I get to the other side, I will pivot again with the needle down. I'm sewing on this really nice Bernina 335 that a clean stitch, which is a new Bernina dealer in Missoula, is letting me use, and it's working great for all these thick layers. All right, so there's the grommet pocket, and then so the other pocket has pencil holding units, and I will show you how to do those. Okay, so here's the other pocket, and I'm gonna get my bobbin thread under control again. I'll pull it way out. And here I go to the other pocket, and I'm gonna, this is a little, I'm gonna smooth it a little bit. And pin it one more time. Grab my big jig again. It's always whenever the bobbin thread is going to show, it's always a little bit challenging. I'm going to get a little bit more on my pocket. There we go. Grab my bobbin thread. And here I go. I'm going to move the big jig, back stitch a little bit. And here I go. I'm just going to go along the edge, pivot, and go up the other edge. And then I'll show you how. I'm just going to do one of the pencil holders because they're all the same. And I'll just be able to hold one pencil on this one, and it's no biggie. I have a kind of funny fabric yarn story. My cousin told me that his wife Debbie is getting into crochet, so I should expect an order from her. And I said, well, I don't sell yarn, I only sell fabric. And he said, oh, it's not crochet. She's getting into knitting. She'll be ordering from you. He said, okay, too bad I don't sell yarn. But this bag is a great yarn fabric crossover. I can give her one of these bags. All right, so there's the main pocket. And I'm going to cut the bobbin thread. And then when you're sewing these little pencil pockets, you're supposed to sew 3. You don't need the big jig, but I'm going to grab the bobbin thread again. But I like to sew them from this bottom up to the opening, because if you start at the opening and go down to the bottom, sometimes you can create a little bubble, an unsightly bubble. There we go. Because there's, just in case you accidentally push the fabric a little bit, which is kind of hard not to do. One of my students was making a pocket like this and made a little bubble, and she called it the Wilson pleat, and left it, which made me very happy. Okay, you want to make sure to back stitch on these pockets because they will get some stress. All right, so you would do the other 2 lines in real life and have room for 3 pens or pencils or knitting needles. And let's head back to the overhead, and I am going to grab my pressing surface. So the next step is, I'm going to trim a little bit more. So the next step is to create these little triangles on the edge, from the right side on the edge of the main bag piece. Even though I was holding my bobbin threads, there are some little nests that I'll fix later. But I did do 3 of them ahead of time because I didn't think you wanted to watch all 4. But here is a corner that's not done. So this is the right side of the bag, and there are 2 little notches here and then a single notch here this way. Okay, cool. So you're gonna first turn from the first notch down to this side notch and avoid burning your fingers. Press it. And then you'll turn along the second notch down toward the notch on the other side. And now I'm going to head to the machine and sew that down. You don't have to fret about your bobbin thread as much anymore because even if there's a little nest, it will be hidden. You'll see. Okay, there we go. Back stitch. And just sew that down. Trim. Okay, I'm heading back to the overhead. I'm on my way. Got a little tangled. And so now we're going to start French seams. The only little tiny complaint I have about this pattern is that they don't announce that it's going to be French seams. They just tell you to sew the side seams wrong sides together, and that's my only little tiny complaint. I wish they had said you're going to be making beautiful French seams, but it's very quickly obvious that that's what you're doing. So I am just putting the side seams wrong sides. Yes, wrong sides together. There is a little notch at the bottom half, and here we go. And now I'm going to sew both of them with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to start at the bottom and go up to, oh yeah, so what size grommet? The instructions say specifically what size grommet you're supposed to use, but we got what we could get at our hardware store. They are supposed to be well, they don't say here, but they're supposed to be some weird 8 millimeters, according to Rachel. 8 millimeter grommets. But we used 6 millimeter grommets. That's what a 1/4 inch is. I learned making my Maven apron and doing the metric conversion. Okay, so 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here. Which is usually about the width of your presser foot. This presser foot is a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch, but I have a 3/8 of an inch mark on my throat plate. Go back stitch here, and flip it over and start at the bottom and go up to the top on the other side. You'll notice that I pin perpendicular to the edge with the, I say balls out, which, so that if I have to flip it, I can still pull the pins out and I don't have to sew over them. Okay. All right, so I'm going to head back to the overhead. We have done the first half of the French seam. And then I love I love a well-planned pattern, and this is some really good planning. At this point, while it's still flat, you're going to pre-press the hems at the top of the bag. So the first press is at 1/2 inch, and I am eyeballing it because that's what I do when it's a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. I have faith that I know what that is. So I like to pin the fabric to the ironing board and then iron on top of the pins. And I use glass head pins, or these are called these ones are magic pins, and they don't melt with the iron. So the second fold over is 1 inch and 1/8, which no, I cannot eyeball that. So I'm going to use my ruler. And here we go, 1 inch and 1/8. Pin to the ironing board. 1 inch and 1/8. Go down to the other end. 1 inch and 1/8. Okay, and I'm going to iron that. And I'm going to use, this is a point presser and a clapper. And if you let fabric cool in a certain position, it will remember that position after it's cool. So if you have any questions while I'm going, please feel free to ask them in the discussion area below. And Rachel will be able to see them if you're watching live. And if you're not, we'll be able to answer them at our leisure. And we will answer your questions. We are constantly monitoring our YouTube and Facebook pages to see if you guys want to interact in any way or have any questions. So ask away and we will answer. So here's the other side, eyeballing the 1/2 inch again. Ironing it in place. And now the 1 and 1/8 again. And it's kind of handy because you can use the other side as your guide. So I'm just kind of making it the same width as my first turn down. And I'm going to let it cool under the point presser. I have some steam going. All right, so now those hems are pressed in place. We're not going to actually sew them yet. We're going to continue on with our French seams. So the next step with the French seams is to trim away about 1/8 of an inch. This is so that the raw edge that's sticking out here doesn't end up sticking out when we sew the final step of the French seam. It also just reduces bulk. But I've tried skipping this step and it doesn't go well. I don't like a hairy looking French seam. Okay. Okay. All right, can you hear me now? Yay! Sorry about that. We lost sound for a minute. So the next step is to draw a little curve, 1/2 inch above the previous seam, which is the first part of the French seam. So this way, there we go. So I am going to make a mark. I actually, oops, wait. I have to think about, I want to be able to start at the bottom. There we go. So I'm going to make a mark at a 1/2 inch above where the original part of the French seam ended. And I'm going to make a little, I'm going to draw a curve down to the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Draw the curve. This is a lot easier than trying to do it freehand while you're sewing. And I'm careful to draw the curve so that I can start sewing this final side seam at the bottom and come up to the curve. Once again, so that I'm not creating a bubble at the bottom. Okay, we're going to head back to the sewing machine. All right, I'm not going to fret too much about my bobbin thread because no one's going to see it. And we're at the 3/8. And once again, I've got about a 3.0. Oh, I have this thing with this machine. I knew it would happen while I was sewing. But sometimes the thread comes out of the needle. But it has an automatic threader, which makes life so much easier, maybe. There we go. Okay. I sew with so many different machines, and they all have little quirks. And the little quirk of this one is that something I do makes it so the needle thread comes out sometimes. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Here I go. Up to my little curve that I drew. Do a little I have it on a kind of big stitch length. It's a little bit hard to go around the curve. But I did it. All right, I'm going to flip it over and sew the other side. With all bag making, back stitching is key because you really want to reinforce all of your seams. But you never know what's going to get a lot of pressure. Here we go. Around, up, back. And boom. So I am going to head back to the overhead. And a little more trimming. So now it's time to box the corners, which this is a really cool way they do it. So what you want. So here is, I have the bag wrong side out. Here's a pocket. Here's the side seam. You're going to create a triangle like this, and make sure you know which direction the side seam is going. You just create this little boxed corner area and kind of pin it in place. You can pin it on the main part of the bag. And then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. And this is the side with the opening for the pocket and the pocket lining. And I'm just going to tuck that in. In a minute, we will be sewing across that. So now I'm using my pockets as kind of my guide for how to make the triangle. I'm going to make sure the side seam is going in the same direction as the first one. And I'm going to pin down here. And I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch away from this pocket piece. So here we go. And this is kind of just holding things in place because we're going to do one more sew in a minute. Oh, phew. I was afraid that the thread was going to come out again. And back stitch. Trim. So just for the record, I'm better in real life at trimming my threads. It's just a lot of trimming to do on camera. Now I'm going to do the other side. So I'm a 1/4 inch away from the pocket fabric. And you might find, depending on your machine or the thickness of your fabric, that you need a big jig. Oops, sorry, I bumped the camera for this part, but I did not feel like I needed one. So I'm going to head back to the overhead, remove my pins, and then this is such a pro thing. I love making things that like people actually sell. So you're gonna take this triangle that you created and tuck it underneath the pocket piece, and we're gonna sew through all of the layers, and that's what makes it really sturdy and able to stand up on its own. So it's a lot of layers, but my little Bernina can get through them no problem. So let's head back to the machine. And I've got all the layers here. I think I will start with a big jig. And you really just want to be about 1/8 of an inch from this fold that you created. Oops. But make sure that you catch everything. Let's back stitch. Especially where the French seam, side seam is really, really thick. But boomity boom with my 100 weight jeans needle and the Bernina, I was able to get right through it. All right, we're going to do the other side. Pull out the thread so that it doesn't come out of the needle on me again. Squishy squish. If your machine is having a lot of trouble with all this thickness, you can actually pound it with a hammer, kind of like a meat tenderizer, and it will kind of break down the molecules and you'll be able to sew through it better. Awesome. Back stitch. And boom. So back to the overhead. This is what the bottom looks like. And we'll just turn it right side out. And I didn't even press it at this point. It's pretty sturdy and rough and ready. I love it. Oops, let's get that tucked in. All right, so now it's time to sew down the hems at the top, and we have prepared them early. And the way you do that, you want to incorporate your leather strap, which is just a 12-inch by 1-inch piece of leather. You can also just use webbing or pleather if you would rather. But you want to have your bag situated so that the pocket without the pencil lines is on top. And grab a ruler and measure 1.5 inches from the side seam. I have my ruler upside down here, but I can tell this is 1.5 inches right here. And then over here, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches from the side seam again. 1.5 and mark right there. And then I am going to situate the leather strap on both sides just so that I don't have to keep coming back to the overhead. But when I was making this, I did one side at a time. So you're just going to slip the leather strap underneath the hem. It's going to the edge of it will line up with this mark, and you want it to be at about a 45-degree angle. And at this, okay, at this point, it's best to use Wonder Clips. I actually didn't need to use Wonder Clips at any other point, but we're just getting reoriented. This is a long video for our systems. Awesome. So I am going to pin the rest of the hem in place because that works just fine. And then I'm going to go over to the other side and put the leather strap in at a 45-degree angle, lined up with this 1.5 inch mark, and Wonder Clip it in place, and then pin the rest of the hem. And then to make sure that I'm not accidentally sewing the bag closed, I'm going to turn it wrong side out before I sew the hems down. then I can sew kind of on the inside of the bag and know that it's a single layer. Ouch. Poked myself with a pin. Okay, so it's wrong side out. And I'm gonna head back over, oops, to the machine. Okay, I'm gonna get underneath here. Hopefully, can you see okay? Let's get, there we go. Move that out of the way and I'm gonna back stitch. And then I'm stitching just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. You can see that the jeans needle goes right through the leather, no problemo. Oops, let me get, I'm a little bit off the hem. Here we go. But if you do have trouble, you can hand crank, maybe put a new needle in, but it shouldn't be any problem. We also have needles that are special for leather, but I did not feel like I needed to switch to that. Let me get the rest here. All the way, back stitch. Pull it out, and then I'm going to do the other side. Here we go. So make sure to let me know if you have any questions, and also let us know what you think about this format where I do most of the project on camera instead of just a few of the steps. I decided to do this whole project on camera because it's really pretty quick and there's really no part that's super, super hard. I usually pick the hardest parts of a project and do them for you, but nothing stood out as a difficult part of this project. The most difficult part is that I'm sewing with, I'm kind of off to the side of the machine, not straight on, so but that's only me. Pull this one out, we're almost there. Make sure this is at a this looks like it's a little bit, not a 45-degree angle, but, oh, thank you, Rachel. Over the leather and finish. Okay, let's head back to the overhead. And I'm going to turn this right side out. And as you can, here's the handle. There's nice big openings for the cording to go through. I'm going to grab this one that I'm finished with. I'm not going to, I'm going to move this. I'm not going to put the cording through on camera, but I used just a bodkin and threader from Merchant & Mills to thread it through, and you do 2 lengths of 36-inch cording, And then you can pull them and close your bag and keep all your fun project inside. So thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for watching me make a whole bag. As you can see, it's really not that hard. It's not that many steps, and it's completely doable. It's a great gift for yourself, and it's a great gift for the crafters in your life. If you decide to make one, please post your finished project in the Facebook community. That is where I hang out. That's where I love to see what you're making and see what's going on with you, any part of your life. I'll be back in a week and a half. I'm gonna go home and see my dad over this weekend, but I'll be back in a week and a half, and I'll be making a really fun Halloween project. So I hope you'll join me, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll get started on Halloween. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.